Hey guys, Dave here. I have a few videos that I'm going to be making over some, I think, interesting topics over the next number of weeks and months, so bear with me as I start making those. This one I thought was very interesting because when I was at Blade Show uh, this past, what was it, last week? Week ago, give or take? Yeah, a week and a half ago. I got to have a conversation with Sal Glesser. For those of you who don't know who Sal Glesser is, he's the owner, founder of Spyderco Knives out in Golden, Colorado. And there's a very interesting conversation that we had, and I just wanted to share it with you. So, as many of you are aware, and if some of you are not, Crucible Industries, the knife manufacturing company, the steel knife manufacturing company, smeltering. They did everything from soup to nuts as far as making the knife steels that we love, know and love today. You know, Magna Cut, Crewware, 10V, 15V. Even CPM 154. You name it, they made it, and they unfortunately went out of business. And there's been a lot of questions arising with what's going to happen next, and this, that, and the third. So you probably have seen Laren Thomas's video about some of the steels, or I should say, some of the names of the steels, of the CPM brand have been purchased. The rights and the names by Aerosteel out of Germany, I believe. And some of the steels have been, the rights of the steels have been purchased by Carpenter, which is an American company. Now, here's the interesting thing. With our conversation, I don't know about you, I really nerd out when it comes to knowing about not just with the steels where they come from, but are they going to be actually made and produced here with American ore, because that's where steel ultimately comes from, right? It's mined. There's ore, excuse me, iron ore, and that is what these steels are made up of. I mean, you have Japanese steel like the Delica you see there. Well, actually, that's not a Japanese steel, sorry. It's a Japanese knife with a German steel, K390. But that's not the subject of the video. That's just there for something to look at. But in regards to the American-made knife steels, right now I have 15V on the table, or on the, I have 10V in the Little Native, and I have Maximet. Now, 10V and 15V are made by Crucible. Maximet is made by Carpenter. This is just one that I happen to take apart and put together with my smooth G10 handle scales that used to be on a Crewware blade, and I just really wanted the 15V on there instead because I like the handle scales. Boy, that was a pain in the neck, taking that apart with the lanyard plug or lanyard tube. I'll have to upload that separate video at a different time. But anyway, let me get back to our conversation. So I approached Sal, and he's such a nice guy. For those of you who've never met Sal or, spoken with him outside of the Blade forums, he is a very nice man. He definitely is concerned about the community. He loves the community. One of the things that was interesting, so I was just inquiring, what's going to happen with these American steels and this, that, and the third. I said, are these steels going to be made in America? Are they going to market them as being made here by either Carpenter, or is it going to be, are the ones coming from Aerosteel going to be marketed differently there? Excuse me. So he was explaining, as I mentioned, the Crucible names and the copyrights, those were purchased by Aerosteel out of, like I said, I believe it's Germany, but somewhere in Europe. And they're still up in the air as far as how they're going to market them. So I don't know if it's going to say, like, as an abbreviation, hypothetically, Era Magna Cut, or if it's made by Carpenter, will it be, CTS Magna Cut? I don't know. Um, I have heard, um, and and forgive me, guys, I'm trying to remember if it was from speaking with Sal, or if it was speaking with um, another maker. I don't fully remember because at Blade Show in Atlanta, you were having conversations with so many people, and it's really hard to remember everything and keep up with everything because there's so much going on, and it's such an amazing show. And really, 3 days is not enough. I mean, yes, you're exhausted, your feet hurt, you're very tired from not sleeping and being so excited, your adrenaline is rushing, but it's really just not enough time to see or do everything or speak to everyone. I mean, I know that Sean Houston was there and I was looking for him, but I couldn't find him. So, no big deal. But anyway, it's just not enough to do everything. But anyway, there was someone else who was talking to, and excuse me, it might have been Sal who said that since Magna Cut, for instance, just one steel of many that is going to Aristeel, that they've found a way, obviously, to make it just as good, but actually better than Crucible was making it. Now, I'm not a metallurgist. I learn and am fascinated by these topics of conversation from Laren Thomas and Sean Houston and Sal Glesser and a lot of them who really dive in deep in these steels, especially Laren, who's invented Magna Cut. And now Magnamax is on the way, and Pro Cut, but it's I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. See, there's so much to think of. So to make it better, that's interesting. I don't know how they would do that, but that's interesting. Maybe they've found an easier process to go about that. I don't know. That would, that's, like I said, there's a lot of open-ended questions. There's a lot of unanswered questions, and there's a lot of things that haven't come to light yet because this is all relatively, new, what has taken place with Crucible. So the thing that I was concerned with was, like I said, is the steel going to be made here in America, or is it going to be steel or ore that they get, from, other countries, and then maybe manufactured here or manufactured there and brought back here, even though it was an American steel, whether it's Magna Cut or S45VN, S30V, Crewware, what have you. Now, here's the interesting thing. So, Magna Cut's not going away. S30V is not going away. S35VN, S45VN, they're not going away. Speaking to Sal, he told me Crewware is going away. So that's interesting. Now, there's other alternatives. I think PD1 is a powder metallurgy, almost equivalent of Crewware. And I think that's made from a German company. I think, I don't remember if it's made by Bowler or not, but Crewware is going away. Now, that's very interesting because I know there's a lot of people in the knife community who love Crewware. So Sal told me that. I said, well, Sal, the thing that I'm looking at is, are they going to be made here? And he was explaining that they're going to be made by Aristeel and then as well Carpenter. I said, well, if Carpenter's an American steel company, wouldn't that mean that they would be made here? And he's like, well, thing is, he said, America's in trouble. And I said, no, I know, because we were just talking about the economy and not just the steel industry, but many industries. I mean, you see You see so much change going on, guys, right now. We have never seen, I don't think, so much change in our lifetimes. And I'm in my 30s, and growing up, you see a lot of change with whether it's the invention of cell phones or your first touchscreen phone and apps on your phone, and there's just you know brick and mortar stores unfortunately are going out of business left and right, and there's so many changes. So anyway, that's what he was explaining. He's like, the U.S. is in trouble, especially with um, the the steel industry, because they're farming it out to different companies across the globe, and you know that's a detriment to the American economy. And I agree with Sal because he wants it to be made here. Oh, sorry, that's what I was saying. When I asked him about Carpenter, he said, "Well, Carpenter, believe it or not, a lot of their stuff, if not most of it, is actually farmed out and made overseas. So even an American company with like Carpenter Technologies, I think it stands for, they're farming out a lot of their steels overseas. They're making it overseas. Like, that's sickening, you know? What is happening to the American industry? You know what I mean? So that was also very fascinating to hear from him. And I mean, he has no reason to lie about this, you know? He has been very transparent, I think, with the knife community in general. But one thing he shared with me too, and he said, one thing that I wanted to do years ago that I tried was to get together with, say, some different knife companies, like whether it was Crucible or even basically developing one with Spyderco on his own and making a foundry right here in America that had the highest technological advances of machinery and logistics and you name it right here in America. But he said, I'm in my 80s now and I can't do that. And, there was a lot of talk and we tried to move forward with that idea, but it just never came to fruition. Now, that was also very interesting. And, Sal, his roots are here as an American, and that's what he was looking forward to doing. I don't know if his son will ever carry out that idea or that passion, that his father had once he is no longer with us, once he passes away, which hopefully is no time soon. I mean, hopefully he stays alive for a while longer. But I'm just saying, speaking the reality of it. But it was very interesting to hear. So the thing that concerns me is, another thing, 15V, he said, is going away. They're no longer going to be able to make that. So if you want a 15V knife, you better get it now. And Spyderco is the only company that I know is making it, unless maybe there is a custom maker who has his own sheets at his house and makes, 15V knives in small batches. I don't know. But, this was very, very fascinating, very intriguing, very captivating as a conversation. I asked him too. I said, Sal, well, what about the U.S. Steel? U.S. Steel, I believe they're based out of Pittsburgh. I said, I know that they, manufacture things such as aerospace and steel with vehicles and things like that. Automobiles. He said, well, yes, but he said that they don't dabble in powder metallurgy. And he said powder metallurgy is a very specific, detailed process. And that's why he explained he wanted to open up a foundry, with, say, Crucible or someone, maybe Carpenter, or develop his own, where they made the steel all here in America, or upgraded, say, Crucible's processes. Because from what I understand, in Syracuse, where they just closed, it was a very dated, old manufacturing facility. So, like he said, he can't do that now. He's in his 80s, as he mentioned. But it just, I don't know, guys. Does it concern you? It certainly concerns me, thinking of the fact that we can't get some of these steels anymore. They're not going to be made anymore. And then some of these steels that are still going to be around, like MagnaCut and other things. I'm not saying I won't buy something made by Aerosteel. I'm not saying that. But there's something missing. Does it make sense that there's not going to be, that some of these steels, if not many of these steels, are not going to be made here in America anymore? Like I said, I don't know about the ore. Are they still going to mine it here, and they're going to ship it to Germany, and then they're going to process it in their own way, and then send it back to, say, Niagara and other places? I know Niagara is processing a lot of these steels here in America, but they're not crucible. They're just like a middleman. They don't actually mine the steels. They don't, and I might not be getting some of the terminology right, so forgive me, but they don't start. Excuse me. They don't produce these steels from soup to nuts, from the start to the finish. They just process them. And I'm glad that they do process a lot of these steels. But where are these slabs and sheets coming from is my point. Are they coming from their own German supply of Solingen, Germany, rather than an American company, And that's the thing. There's not many powdered metallurgy companies because, as Sal said, it's a very specific process and it's very detail oriented. And so I'm not saying that there couldn't be a startup company, but it's a very niche thing. And I don't know. It's sad to see. It really is, to see the country going the way that it's going, because I love America. It's the greatest country in the world that God gave us. It's a blessing. And I just hate seeing American companies go out of business. I hate seeing things being made overseas that could be made here and could be mined here and could be processed here. And I'm not talking, and that's the thing. This goes back to like being actually made in America or assembled in America, right? So you can have a shoe, for instance, that says, well, it's made in America, but is it actually made in America? Like, for instance, I have a pair of New Balance 993s, and they're made in America. It's 70% made in America, so 30% come from overseas. So, okay, that's a standard that they have with the U.S. government, I think, where things are actually, if they're labeled made in America, they have to be, I think, at least 50 or percent, maybe 30%. I don't remember the exact percentage, but they have to be a certain percentage stating how much is made here. But, if something says, oh, it's assembled in America, well, then it's not actually made here. It's just assembled. It's just put together like a puzzle here. But the parts are not made here. Like putting together an actual puzzle, right? Putting together a Lego set. Excuse me. If it's made elsewhere, but then assembled here, it's not made in America. And that's the big problem that I have. And I know Sal has that same sentiment as me. Like I said, it was a very good conversation. It wasn't too long. What I shared with you was basically the gist of our conversation. I didn't get to ask him whether or not, and not that they would downgrade, because these steels are, far inferior to the powder metallurgy steels that we have today. But I was thinking, like, what about 154 CM? That's not a powder metallurgy steel. What about, D2, like American made D2? What about, I was trying to think of some others, 440C and 440B, 440A. I know these are, lesser quality steels compared to what we have even in front of us. Yes, But I mean, if companies were still able to grab those steels, could they still grab those? Do they, because it's not from they don't need it from a refinery that produces powder metallurgy steels, because those are non-powdered steels. So can they still acquire those? I would venture to say yes. I didn't get to ask him that, but I know a lot of knife companies and us knife snobs don't want those steels in our knives. I mean, I would still, though, take a 154 CM blade as long as it was hardened properly and heat treated properly. I have actually heard and read that 154 CM or CPM 154 really is, a lot of companies or makers will harden that steel to around 59 HRC, which is about, I'd say, average, maybe 60. But I have heard you can push that as high as like 64 HRC. And I have heard that that's where it can shine like nobody's business. So for a non-powdered steel like 154 CM, or that would be impressive to see. I don't think I've ever seen a maker that has produced that steel at that hardness or hardened it, heat treated it that way, but that would be, excuse me, interesting. So I think that's all I have for you guys. Just wanted to share that interesting conversation that Sal and I had. Like I said, he's disappointed with the way things are going, but there's nothing that can be done, at least not at this time. And guys, and this is not turning into a video to buy American, but really support American companies, support American workers any way you can. Yes, I know it's cheaper to go out and buy something made in China, depending on what you're buying. But if you can buy something made in America, buy it. As much as you can, support the local community, mom and pop shops. Those are the ones that keep our country running. They produce the most revenue in this country, not the big corporations. Excuse me. And the thing is, don't sell out your country by selling these things to other countries. I just heard something else with a different company, a manufacturer, selling to a Czech company. In regards to different product, and I was just like, really? Why? You're it's sickening to me, and I don't like it. America's the greatest country in the world, and to see the downfall of so many things here is very disheartening. But you know what? It is a sign of the times, and America is not mentioned in the Bible, but Israel still is. And Israel is going to stand because God is going to intervene one day, and he will protect them from all its enemies. So, anyway, without getting into other topics, just wanted to share that, which is true. But I think that's everything I have. Thank you guys for watching. Until the next video, and I'll be producing some of those soon. So, thank you for watching. Have a good day.